So for this video, I'm going to cover the basics of how to get this form, this model, for texturing purposes. I'm using this as a guide, mainly the one that has the big old nuts in the smooth chocolate top, the bite taken out so we can see the ice cream inside, all that stuff. So our first order of business is to create the basic form of the shell, the waffle cone part. So to my mind, it's going to be easiest to start with a cylinder. You should be able to recreate all this stuff in Maya. So I'm going to go to Mesh, Cylinder. I'm going to go to my front view here, and I'm going to change this so I can see it front. You can also just rotate that in Maya accordingly. I'm going to go up a little higher for the this value, again, subdivisions in Maya, so I get a rounder thing. And then I'm going to scale it down so it's about the right thickness for the shell, okay? Now, obviously it's not there yet, so we're just going to go ahead and start doing some stuff to this to make it look more shell-like. So I'm going to go to, again, the front view, edit mode. I'm going to go to the faces and select and delete all of the faces. I'm probably also going to ditch these two faces as well, so we just have just this arch on top, okay? I'm going to go ahead to edge selection, and I'm going to grab these two edges, and I'm going to bridge them, okay? Again, mine has the exact same kind of option to start to fill that in. What else do we want to do here? We're going to ultimately want to fill in these holes. So Maya has the option of fill hole. I'm going to use the similar thing here. You just select those openings and hit F to fill them in. Okay. So we're getting that rough shape. The one of the last parts that's going to be critical here is getting a rounded bottom here. This part right here. Okay. So probably some bevels will do the trick there. Let's see here. Maybe it'll help if I Control R and add in maybe an extra edge loop there. I'm going to grab that, push it down a little bit. See if that makes a difference when I do these bevels. So now I'm going to go back here and do the Blender equivalent of freeze transforms in Maya. So Control A, apply all. It's like, again, freeze transforms. And then with these two edges selected, should be able to bevel those, create sort of a rounded bottom. I'm going to go ahead and just take this one, grab it, and move it up a little bit so we get the rounded base. So that's the kind of basics of the shell shape, okay? Now, obviously we've got these other issues, which is, or not issues, but sort of hurdles or task next, which is how do we kind of get this ballooned top part, which I want to see, and also the bite taken out. Really these start to become the domain of sculpting. I'm going to show next sculpting this stuff in Blender. Okay, so once I've got that set, I'll just call this base shape. What I often will do here is duplicate the thing and hide one just in case I screw up and need to use it later. I don't want to have to go back again. So with all that selected, I'm going to switch over to the sculpting mode in Blender. I like to just turn on my wireframe. I just go to here and turn on wireframe so I can see what's happening below the surface. And this is actually really something that I showed in my modeling class. So for those of you who didn't take modeling with me, you're probably gonna have to get up to speed a little bit on this. So at least basic sculpting. So next up, I'm going to enable this thing called Dyne Topo. Dyne Topo, oops, hit OK, is something you can see it's going to start to triangulate. So far, it doesn't have even triangles yet. These triangles are really huge, those are ones that are smaller. But I'm going to go down to Dyne Topo and change this from relative detail to constant detail. And then you'll notice if I click on this detail flood fill, you see how it starts to destroy the shape a little bit. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to start changing this value. So you'll notice if I go higher, that means I get smaller triangles. So maybe I'll try doing something like, let's try 10 to start with in detail flow fill. And you see it's starting to maintain the original shape a little bit better. That actually might not be a bad value to start off with right there. Maybe I'll undo that and make it a little, so they're a little smaller. Maybe I'll go to 12. Alright, so now that I've done that, I don't really need to see all the wireframe. I just like to do that, especially for demonstrating for others, but also I like to sort of see how big my triangles are. I'm going to go back up here and hide that wireframe again. So now that I've got this, this dynamic topology is going to be great because I can basically, it'll sort of update the number of polygons as needed. So I never will have stretched polygons. So next up, let's see here. I'm going to probably want to turn on, maybe I'll turn on symmetry to start. So let's see up here, you see how I can turn on X symmetry. So now if I like make a change on one side, changes it on the other side. Maybe I'll also add in a little Y symmetry too, so that now you'll see it's doing it on 4 different sides. I may turn that off later on. I also personally like to, you can see all the hard edges. I like to go back to Topo and enable smooth shading. It's just my preference. Alright, so how do we get to start with this big bulbous sort of like chocolate stuff? Well, this is pretty easy now that we've set up all this stuff. I can switch over to the inflate. I'm going to hit F and let go. That's F as in Frank. Drag this to bring this up a little bit larger. You can also change this value right over here, this little brush settings, and now you'll notice it starts to allow me to bulge out and create all that stuff. Okay? Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. F, let go, and then just sort of pull down a little bit. You can see you can start to really quickly create the irregularity, all that stuff of that stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit more. I'm going to really start to create a nice definition, or kind of like distinction between the shell and the chocolate stuff. Okay, something like that. Keep going. Pen is always going to be better for this kind of work than your mouse. I'm using my mouse just because I'm kind of lazy right now. Alright, that'll seem like that'll be okay. And again, I have symmetry turned on. You may want to, if you really want this to be authentic, you may want to just shut that off at some point. It might be a nice place to start. You can just turn them off when you want to, but I'm just going to keep it simple for this demo. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Now maybe I'll, we've got a pretty defined, you see, sort of overhang here, like it's really flat and then there's a really crisp edge where those two meet. So may want to make sure that this bulges out enough, but also you can sort of dig in to better define that boundary with something like the crease tool. So now I can get in there and just sort of like dig in a little bit closer like that. It's not really too pronounced right now. The way you can really get a sharp crease if you want to do this right is, I'm going to just turn on my wireframe again. See, I'm still limited by the number of polygons here, but if I switch this Topo to something, instead of constant detail, I'll do this thing called brush detail. Watch this. Now you get this nice, see how many more polygons are getting created there? So when I turn off my wireframe, you'll see what the result is. See how we get this nice, crisp, defined sort of like boundary between there. I can also hold down Shift key to smooth that out a little bit. Okay. Great. So now I got that done. The bite, I might just sort of like turn off all my symmetry at this point and just sort of like eat away at this section, so to speak. So maybe I'll go back to just the draw, or I really do like clay. So I'm gonna hit F and increase the size there, and then if you hold down the Control key, that actually digs away. So you see how it's just sort of like create a nice bite right out of that section right there. That's it. That's pretty much it for your sculpt. Maybe I'll smooth that out a little bit, something like that's ready to be retopologized. So you can just then take that, bring it in, if you want to retopologize in Maya, you can just bring it into Maya, use Quad Draw, give yourself a game res mesh based off of that. And you can also use this for baking purposes, by the way. And that'll give you some extra kind of good qualities when you're texturing this in Substance Painter. Now, just an additional thing, if we're, again, really trying to do this right, we also have the nuts, and they really do bulge quite a bit. So, you know, you might go back in there with that same inflate. I still have the brush detail set up. As a result, when I make this really nice and small, that should allow me, let me just undo that. I need to increase my strength to get this pretty pronounced. There we go. So now you can see I can use this to sort of get these nice, a little bit larger nut bulges, so to speak. So I can just start like going around, you know, get a few of those here and there. You get the idea. And again, when you say bake, those are just going to look that much better. Okay. All right, so that is all I'm going to show for the taco sculpt.